This is wine to drink.
Good, good.
We are friends.
Friends, good.
She was alive for only 5 minutes, yet her scream still echoes through nearly a century of horror. Elsa Lanchester could barely move beneath her bandages. She went thirsty for hours, trapped inside a costume that turned beauty into agony. Boris Karloff shattered his hip on the very first day of filming and limped through every scene in silence. Director James Whale defied the studio, mocking religion, daring censors, and losing pieces of his masterpiece to fire and fear. This is 20 disturbing and bizarre facts about the Bride of Frankenstein from 1935, the true story of how one of the most beautiful monsters in cinema was born from the very horrors its makers tried to hide. Fact number 1. James Whale didn't want to make a sequel. When Frankenstein shocked audiences in 1931, Universal immediately demanded another, but director James Whale refused. He felt he had told the story completely, insisting he'd squeezed the idea dry. For 4 long years, the studio pressured him with offers and rewrites, yet Whale remained unmoved. To him, repeating success without meaning was artistic death. Eventually, he relented, but only if he could reinvent it entirely. Not a continuation, but a commentary. He infused Bride of Frankenstein with black humor, surrealism, and religious symbolism. The monsters were still there, but this time they mirrored society's cruelty and vanity. Whale's defiance turned a studio-mandated sequel into a profound statement about creation and consequence. The very film he never wanted to make became his masterpiece, the crown jewel of Universal horror. Fact number 2. Boris Karloff hated that the monster could speak. By 1935, Boris Karloff had become the face of modern horror, but when he discovered the monster would talk, he was livid. He argued that silence was the creature's soul, a wordless reflection of suffering and innocence. Dialogue, he warned, would strip away mystery. Director Whale disagreed. He envisioned the monster learning speech, evolving from brute to thinking being. Overruled, Karloff reluctantly recorded the gravelly broken phrases that now define the sequel. Friend? Love? Alone? Though Karloff detested the change, audiences felt newfound sympathy. The stilted voice made the monster human, capable of yearning, comprehension, heartbreak. Karloff's resistance ironically deepened the pathos. His discomfort bled through every syllable, turning what he saw as a mistake into one of cinema's most haunting performances.
Remember, this is bread.
Bread. Good, good.
Fact number 3. The scene where the monster tries to rescue the Christ was banned. Few scenes in early Hollywood caused outrage before filming even began. Whale planned one that would, the monster wandering through a graveyard, discovering a crucifix, and tenderly trying to free Christ from the cross. It was meant to show the creature's empathy, his belief that another tormented soul was trapped as he was. But censorship boards deemed the concept sacrilegious. They forbade even a frame from being shot. Still, traces of the idea lingered. Cruciform shadows, outstretched arms, imagery that evokes martyrdom. The monster became a tragic mirror of faith, rejected by both God and man. Though the Christ scene never appeared, its spirit permeates the film, reminding viewers that empathy can be branded as sin when it comes from a creature we call unholy. Fact number 4. The bride appears for less than 5 minutes. She's the title character, yet her screen time is under 5 minutes. From her first lightning-charged breath to her terrified scream, Elsa Lanchester's bride defines the film despite barely existing within it. Whale knew that mystery creates power. The less we see, the more we imagine. Those fleeting moments, the trembling fingers, the electric eyes, the shattering refusal, were enough to cement her among horror's immortals. She's also the only Universal monster who never harms anyone. Her tragedy lies in rejection itself. When she turns from the monster, shrieking, "No!" that instant of horror and heartbreak closes the film and opens a legend. In cinema, 5 minutes of truth can echo longer than a lifetime.
Friend?
Fact number 5. Elsa Lanchester played both Mary Shelley and the bride. Elsa Lanchester didn't only portray the bride, she also embodied her creator. The film opens on a candlelit storm where Mary Shelley recounts her tale, played by Lanchester herself. Whale cast her deliberately in both roles, connecting imagination and invention, art and monstrosity. Mary Shelley dreams her creature into being, and moments later, that dream takes flesh through the same face transformed by science. Lanchester loved the symmetry. She once said it made her feel both God and victim. In doing so, Whale turned the author into her own character, a poetic loop where creator and creation gaze into each other's eyes, and both are horrified by what they see. Fact number 6. The bride's hair wasn't a wig. When audiences first saw The Bride of Frankenstein, many assumed that towering, electrified crown of hair was some elaborate wig. But it wasn't. That was Elsa Lanchester's real hair, twisted, teased, and sculpted into a literal monument of horror. Each morning began before sunrise as makeup artist Jack Pierce wrapped her head in gauze, built a wire cage over her scalp, and wove her hair upward until it stood a full foot tall. Then came the chemicals, resin, spirit gum, and even shellac to harden it into position. Under the blinding studio lights, it smelled faintly of smoke and ozone, like something charged by lightning. Lanchester later joked that one wrong move would have set me ablaze faster than the monster's lab. The iconic gray streaks, shaped like lightning bolts, were her idea, a visual echo of the current that brought her to life. But the hair's real power was symbolic. It fused beauty and terror, femininity and experimentation in a single unforgettable image. Fact number 7. Her look was modeled on Queen Nefertiti. The bride's haunting beauty wasn't born entirely from Gothic imagination, it was drawn from ancient history. James Whale wanted her to feel both alien and eternal, a creation that transcended time itself. So he turned to the past, specifically to Queen Nefertiti, the Egyptian icon of elegance and power. The art team studied photographs of Nefertiti's 3,000-year-old bust, focusing on her elongated neck, regal posture, and the crown that seemed to reach for the heavens. They reshaped those ancient proportions into something uncanny. The bride's headdress mimicked Nefertiti's tall silhouette, while the white wrapping suggested a mummy queen reborn through science. Even her makeup, high cheekbones, kohl-rimmed eyes, and sculpted brows echoed the queen's royal portraiture. Lanchester's piercing stare completed the illusion, part monarch, part experiment, both divine and damned. Fact number 8. The bride's hiss was inspired by swans. When Elsa Lanchester asked Whale how the bride should move, he simply said, "She's not human, she's beautiful, but dangerous." That direction sent her to the park, where she spent hours studying swans. She noticed how they glided gracefully over water, silent and serene, until disturbed. Then, in an instant, they became feral, hissing with open beaks and violent energy. That contrast fascinated her. Grace and aggression coiled together in one creature, regal above the surface, chaos beneath. Lanchester brought that duality to the screen. She shaped her neck movements after their elegant arcs and crafted the bride's signature hiss directly from their warning call. During filming, she hissed through endless takes, her throat raw by the end of each day, but the sound was hypnotic. Part animal, part steam, part spirit, leaving a body. Fact number 9. The bride costume made bathroom breaks nearly impossible. To become the bride, Elsa Lanchester had to be wrapped, quite literally, like the dead. Her costume consisted of multiple layers of linen, rubber, and adhesive tape that encased her from neck to feet. Once sealed in, she couldn't bend, sit properly, or even scratch an itch. The bandages were glued directly to her skin and reinforced with metal fasteners hidden beneath the folds. The process took over 3 hours each morning, and once the costume was on, it stayed on. Lanchester quickly learned to avoid drinking water because using the bathroom required a complete unwrapping. She once joked that her dresser was closer to me than my husband by the end of filming. Crew members had to lift her onto set, help her stand, and adjust her posture between takes, but that restriction shaped her performance. Every movement became slow and deliberate, every turn of her head mechanical, not out of acting choice, but necessity. Fact number 10. Colin Clive had a broken leg during filming. While Elsa Lanchester suffered inside her wrappings, Colin Clive was battling pain of his own. The man who played Dr. Frankenstein had recently broken his leg in a riding accident just weeks before production began. Whale refused to replace him, convinced no one else could capture Clive's tormented genius. To accommodate the injury, sets were redesigned. Many of Clive's scenes were shot from the waist up, and props were rearranged so he could lean or sit in every frame. In the laboratory sequences, he's often gripping a railing or slumped over the table, clever blocking to conceal the cast beneath his trousers. But the pain was real. His trembling hands, strained voice, and wide-eyed exhaustion came as much from physical agony as from character work. Offset, Clive struggled with alcoholism and ill health, but on camera, he burned with intensity. His performance, delivered through suffering, mirrors the Doctor's obsession. Both men driven by creation, both consumed by it. Within 2 years of the film's release, Clive would be gone, dead at just 37. But his final portrayal remains electric. The broken man who made monsters live again. Fact number 11. Boris Karloff broke his hip on the first day of filming. On the very first day of production, disaster struck. During a scene that required him to wade through waist-deep water in a rubber suit, Karloff slipped, twisting violently and fracturing his hip. For most actors, that would have meant an immediate halt to filming, but Karloff wasn't like most actors. He insisted on continuing. The crew adjusted his movements, the camera angles, even the floor surfaces to accommodate his limp, but he refused to quit. That's why the monster moves the way he does in Bride of Frankenstein, not just lumbering, but visibly burdened, like something barely holding itself together. It's not just performance, it's real pain. Karloff's stoicism gave the monster a fragile humanity, a sense that every step forward costs him dearly. The injury that could have broken the film instead deepened it, turning suffering into substance. Behind the scars and bolts stood an artist literally enduring agony to give the world one of cinema's greatest tragedies. Fact number 12. The monster's scars actually heal throughout the film. If you watch closely, the monster's face in Bride of Frankenstein changes subtly as the story unfolds. His skin seems smoother, his burns lighter, his hair fuller. That wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, part of a quiet evolution crafted by legendary makeup artist Jack Pierce. Pierce saw makeup as storytelling. In the first film, the monster emerged from death covered in scars and raw burns. For the sequel, Pierce wanted to show that time had passed, that the monster's body, like any living being, was trying to heal. So, as production continued, he gradually reduced the prosthetics, softened the edges of the wounds, and filled in patches of hair. Scene by scene, the monster appears to regenerate.
Good. Good.
Fact number 13. The entire score was recorded in one 9-hour marathon. Composer Franz Waxman faced the impossible. Deliver a sweeping, emotional score for The Bride of Frankenstein in just one day. Most composers at the time were given weeks, but Waxman was handed a tight deadline and 22 exhausted musicians, all packed into a soundstage at Universal. For 9 straight hours, the orchestra played without rest. Waxman conducted feverishly, cueing violins, timpani, and brass as film reels flickered above them. Each character had a musical signature: the monster's mournful low strings, the bride's trembling harp motif, and Dr. Pretorius's darkly whimsical theme. Waxman called it a symphony of souls stitched together, mirroring the film's very idea of creation from chaos. When the session finally ended, the musicians were drenched in sweat, their hands blistered. Yet what they produced was nothing short of revolutionary. The score became one of Hollywood's earliest examples of full thematic composition. Music that didn't just accompany scenes, but told the story emotionally. Decades later, Waxman's haunting melodies would inspire Bernard Herrmann's Psycho Strings, John Williams' Monster themes, and Danny Elfman's Gothic orchestrations. Fact number 14, the final chord, was designed to feel like an explosion. James Whale was obsessed with detail, especially sound. As he neared completion of The Bride of Frankenstein, he told Waxman he wanted the film's final moment to blast through the audience, not metaphorically, literally. "I want the music to explode," he said, as though the theater itself is struck by lightning. Waxman took the challenge personally. For the final laboratory scene, he built layer upon layer of percussion, brass, and strings, each climbing in intensity until they collided in pure chaos. The last chord wasn't harmonious. It was violent, a crash of sound so fierce it blurred the line between score and sound effect. In early test screenings, people flinched as the walls seemed to rumble around them. That innovation, using music as physical impact, was unheard of in 1935. Whale and Waxman had effectively invented cinematic sound design. The explosion on screen destroyed the monster's world. The explosion in the theater shattered silence itself. When that final chord hit, the audience didn't just watch the ending. They felt it. It was one of the first times a film's sound truly became part of its storytelling power. Fact number 15. Billy Barty played a tiny homunculus hidden in a bottle. In one of the strangest and most imaginative sequences of the film, Dr. Pretorius unveils his tiny people, miniature humans he claims to have grown in glass jars. Among them is a tiny infant sitting in a high chair, brought to life for a fleeting few seconds. That infant was played by Billy Barty, a young actor who would go on to become one of Hollywood's most respected performers with dwarfism. At the time, Barty was only 10 years old. Whale chose him for his expressive movements, believing even the smallest gesture could make the scene believable. The role required Barty to sit motionless under blinding lights as special effects artists combined multiple film exposures to make him appear trapped inside a bottle. It was physically demanding and technically groundbreaking, one of the earliest uses of compositing for scale illusions. Originally, Whale shot a close-up of the tiny infant crying out, but studio executives found it too unsettling and ordered the shot removed. Still, Barty's brief appearance captured Whale's dark humor perfectly. Science reduced to absurdity, life mocked in miniature. For Barty, it was an unforgettable beginning to a lifelong career. And for Whale, it was proof that even the smallest role could reflect the film's central theme: mankind's arrogance in playing God, bottled up for the world to see. Fact number 16. The miniature devil was played by the actor's double. Among the most visually bizarre moments in The Bride of Frankenstein is the reveal of Dr. Pretorius's bottled creations, miniature humans he proudly calls his experiments. One of them, a tiny red-skinned devil dancing gleefully inside his glass prison, hides a strange behind-the-scenes secret. That devil wasn't played by a random performer, but by Peter Shaw, the real-life stand-in and double for Ernest Thesiger, who played Pretorius himself. Technically, it was groundbreaking. The miniature sequences were filmed through multiple exposures, a complex layering of images that required perfect synchronization. One mistake, and the entire shot had to be redone, but when completed, the effect astonished audiences. It was surreal, funny, and disturbing all at once, the embodiment of Whale's tone. Fact number 17. Valerie Hobson was only 17 years old. When Valerie Hobson stepped into the role of Elizabeth Frankenstein, she was barely 17, still a teenager surrounded by seasoned stars twice her age. Replacing Mae Clarke, who played Elizabeth in the original Frankenstein, was daunting enough. But for Hobson, this was baptism by fire. James Whale was known for his precision, demanding emotional control even in chaos. Hobson recalled that her nerves often betrayed her, and Whale used that to his advantage, the trembling in her hands, the wide, frightened eyes. Those weren't rehearsed mannerisms. They were real. During the film's explosive climax, her screams of terror weren't scripted either. The special effects crew detonated part of the laboratory sooner than expected, and Hobson's reaction to the blast was one of genuine panic. Whale loved it and kept it in the final cut. Her performance brought a rare innocence to the gothic madness swirling around her. While the monster and his bride embodied the extremes of creation, Hobson's Elizabeth represented human vulnerability, love caught between two obsessions. After filming, Hobson reflected that The Bride of Frankenstein was both terrifying and transformative. "It scared me to death," she said, "but it made me an actress." For someone barely out of childhood, she managed to anchor one of cinema's most sophisticated horrors with pure, unfiltered humanity. Fact number 18. The Bride was credited only as a question mark. When The Bride of Frankenstein premiered, audiences scanned the credits for Elsa Lanchester's name. They found it, but only once. She was listed as Mary Shelley in the opening sequence. The bride, however, was credited only as a question mark. This was James Whale's deliberate tribute to the original Frankenstein from 1931, where Boris Karloff was also billed as a question mark to preserve the monster's mystique. But this time, the choice carried deeper meaning. The bride's existence, after all, is a question of identity, of creation, of womanhood, assembled from fragments. The symbol perfectly captured her paradox, both alive and lifeless, human and unnatural, adored and feared. Fact number 19. 15 minutes of footage were lost forever. The version of The Bride of Frankenstein that audiences know today isn't the one James Whale originally created. His first cut ran close to 90 minutes, rich with sardonic humor, religious imagery, and philosophical dialogue. But Universal executives panicked. They thought the film was too strange, too long, too controversial. Under pressure from censors and studio heads, Whale's masterpiece was trimmed to 75 minutes, and the removed footage was never seen again. Among the lost sequences were rumored extensions of the crucifix scene, more of Pretorius's unholy experiments, and an expanded ending that explored the monster's final moment of consciousness. The deleted reels were likely destroyed during Universal's 1940s vault purges, an era before studios valued film preservation. Historians have searched archives worldwide, but only fragments remain. Production stills, continuity notes, and testimonies from early screenings. Those missing 15 minutes haunt classic cinema like a ghost. Fact number 20. The film was censored and banned around the world. Even in its shortened form, The Bride of Frankenstein shocked authorities worldwide. In 1935, its blend of religious subtext, moral ambiguity, and strange sensuality was too much for many nations to handle. The film was outright banned in Trinidad, Hungary, and Palestine for corrupting public morals. China demanded that entire scenes, including the monster's friendship with the blind hermit, be deleted, claiming they promoted sympathy for blasphemy. Sweden's censorship board made a staggering 25 cuts, removing shots of violence, graveyards, and any dialogue hinting at God's fallibility. In Britain, the censors initially refused approval, labeling it unnatural and revolting, though they later relented after heavy edits. Yet each attempt to silence the film only amplified its reputation. Word spread that it was too disturbing for the public, which of course made everyone desperate to see it. Underground screenings popped up across Europe. Critics hailed it as a work of art disguised as horror, a mirror to mankind's arrogance and cruelty. Whale never apologized. He believed horror should unsettle, not reassure. The world doesn't need another happy ending, he said. It needs a little truth. Nearly 90 years later, The Bride of Frankenstein still holds that truth, censored, banned, but never broken. Proof that real monsters are often the ones trying to stop stories from being told. And there you have it. Behind every hiss, every bolt of lightning, and every echoing scream lies the human story of The Bride of Frankenstein. A film born from defiance, nearly destroyed by censorship, and saved by the obsession of those who refuse to compromise their art. If you enjoyed uncovering the secrets behind this Gothic masterpiece, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another dive into classic horror's hidden history, and tell us in the comments, which Universal monster should we resurrect next? Because here on this channel, the dead never stay buried for long. Never stay buried for long. Never stay buried.